So you always do the white center first. And for this solve, you had a pretty nice white center. What I would have held it like this and done F prime U wide 2, but you did something else. You held it like this and did R wide U wide 2, or R prime U wide 2, and then you had this, so U2L. And then from here, you just did L prime U2L, which is fine, and then you did Y, F U prime, R wide U2, R wide prime. You could have canceled inserting the first yellow bar with inserting the second white bar, but that's pretty fine. That's pretty minor. And then you did, for the blue center, you did Z prime, U, R wide prime, F prime, and then X prime, U2, R wide, and then X prime, F, X prime, R wide 2. So that's pretty bad, and it could have been a lot better. I personally would have done the blue center like this. So R prime, U prime to pair those two up. And then I would just do F prime, R wide 2, F prime, R, and that solves the blue center on top. So then you did your orange center, you did an X2, and then you put this bar in the top, which you did U2, R wide prime, U2, R wide, and then you did F prime, and then R wide, U prime, R wide prime, U2, and you rotate it up, R wide, U2, R wide prime. Pretty straightforward solution there. So what I would have done here is I would have paired these two up, so like that, and then just finish off the center. And that'd be completely 2gen and less moves. So for your last two centers, you did X, F prime, F prime, F prime, and then you did R, U prime, R wide 2, F2, R wide. So the solution itself was fine, but obviously you could have just done an F instead of 3 F primes. So for your first edge, you just rotated up so that you had white top, green front, and then you did U prime U, Y2, D, D prime. So obviously that was a little much, and then you just brought this one up like that, and then you just did a U wide, and then you had just an insert. So obviously all of those extra moves were not really necessary, but yeah, that was your first edge. Personally, instead of doing what you did, I would have gone for this edge, because you could just pair it up like that, and it would not be, you wouldn't have to do any D moves, and you wouldn't have to do a Y2, you could just do a Y prime. But that's the edge I would have done, but you did go for the orange and white. So for your second edge, you did U, Y prime, R, U prime, R prime, Y, U wide prime, U2, R, U prime, R prime. And that solved this edge into the back. And there is a better way you could have done that. The best way to do this edge would have just been by doing a Y, U prime, and then pairing it up. But you did do the other solution. And then for this edge, you just did a Y2, and then you did this edge. So you just paired them up, did a U wide, and then a U, and inserted them. That was fine. So your fourth edge was the white and green, and you rotated and paired them up like this. And the best thing to do would have been just do a U wide prime, U prime, and insert it with L prime UL. But you rotated and then did U wide prime, and then just inserted it with righty moves. So make sure you don't do an unnecessary rotation there. So your fifth edge was this one. So you did U prime, U prime, U prime, Y, L prime, UL. And then what you should have done is, you should have just done a U instead of the triple U prime. And what you should have done is just did a U prime and inserted with lefty moves. But once more, you did a Y prime, U prime, and then inserted with righty moves. And then this edge was just a free edge, the blue and yellow one. So you did the best possible solution here. You just paired them up and inserted them. Obviously, no complaints there. That's a 4-move edge. And you got lucky here again. You just had a free edge, so you did U wide, U2, and then just inserted with lefty moves. Obviously, once more, no complaints there. it is a very simple edge. And for this edge, I don't know if you saw this, or I don't know if you forced this. If you did, that's great, but if not, it's still a very nice edge. So what you should have done is you should have just done a U wide U prime and then inserted with L prime UL, but you did a U prime Y prime and inserted with righty moves, which is something I see you do a lot. You insert a lot of edges with righty moves. So then here you just had this edge, which was obviously a U2 away. There's no better way you could have done that. And then here, instead of just doing a Y, you did a Y prime Y2, and then you did U wide prime, and then you did a sexy move, Y, L prime UL, and then a U wide to pair that up. A better way you could have done that last edge, this is, you don't really use a very common slice flip slice algorithm. Yours has a sexy move and into a rotation and a lefty insert. There is a lot better of an algorithm that you can do here. So when you have like the slice flip slice case, you can do U wide prime, R, U, R prime, F, R prime, F prime, R, U wide. And then for your last two edges, you just did a Y2, and then your slice flip slice algorithm, which just goes like that. Once again, just remember to use the standard slice flip slice algorithm. So for your first solve, or for your second solve rather, you did the white center. So you paired these two up with R prime, or R wide U prime, and then you did an X2, and then you did U prime, R wide, U prime, R wide 2 prime. What I personally would have done here is I would have done an R prime, and then, so I would have finished it like this: R prime, U prime, D prime, R, U prime, R2 prime. It's a similar number of moves to what you did, but it is rotationless and regroupless, so that's just a little bit better. So then your next center was the yellow center. So you did like this. You did U2, R wide U prime, R wide prime, and then you did a Y, and then R prime U wide to pair those two up, and then you just inserted that last bar for your yellow center. So next you did the blue center. You did R wide U prime, R wide prime, and then you did X, U prime, X, U prime, L wide. So what I would have done here is R prime, U prime, R wide, and then just pair them up. That's less moves and less rotations. So what you did here is you went for the orange center, so you did R wide U2, R wide prime to put this one in, and then you did X, F prime, and then R wide U2, R wide prime to put that in, and then X prime, L prime, U2, L. And then luckily enough for you, that actually solved the last three centers, which is pretty cool. What I would have done for the orange center is I would have done what you did, so R wide, U2, R wide prime, and then I would have done D, L wide 2, U2, L wide 2. That wouldn't have solved last three centers like yours did, but you still would have a very easy last three centers case, and it would still be less moves than what you did. Your first edge was the green and red edge. I also would have done this edge, but I would have done it a little differently. A cool way to pair up this edge when it's in this sort of position, like these two need to go together and the top colors are not matching, you can do R wide 2, D, R prime, or R wide prime, U2, R wide, D prime, R wide prime, U2, R wide prime, and that would pair that up. But wait. But what you did is you did U prime, L prime UL, R U prime R prime, U wide prime, and then R U prime R prime to pair that up. So that's just a little trick that you could have used to pair that up in less moves. So for your next edge, you went for these two, which makes sense. They're very close to being solved. But I'm not sure why you didn't go for this one. I'm guessing you just didn't see it, but that would have been really easy. You could have just done that. But for this edge, I would have done it like this: U wide prime, R, U prime, R prime. But what you did is U wide prime, U prime, or wait, no, you did U prime, U wide prime, U prime, R, U prime, R prime to put that in. So here you went for the blue and yellow edge. It would have been better to, I'm just guessing you didn't see this still, it would have been better to just do it U wide to pair those two up, but you did do the blue and yellow. So you did U prime, Y, and then you did an L prime, UL, or wait, hold on. Yeah, L prime UL, U wide prime, and then instead of just doing like a U prime and then inserting this with L prime UL, you rotated and did R prime U prime R prime. So again, it would have been a lot easier to just do like a D wide 2 or something like that to pair these two up, but I'm still guessing you didn't see that. So you did pretty much the next best thing. You did a Y prime, R prime, U prime, and then, or U wide prime, and then you did U prime, R prime. So the solution itself was fine, but the edge choice could have been better. So here, so for your fifth edge, you did the white and green. So you did U prime, U, and then a Y prime, R prime, U wide, and then here you should have just inserted with ready moves, but then you did a Y and inserted with L prime UL. So the edge choice itself was fine, but it would have been better for you to instead of doing U prime U, just doing a U prime, and B to not rotate and insert it with lefty moves, instead insert it with righty moves. So for your next edge, you went for these two, the blue and orange. Here, the best edge to do would have just been these two, because you could have flipped that edge and then just did a U wide prime. But you did do these two, so you did L prime UL U prime, and then a Y, and then a Y, L prime UL U wide, Y prime, and then just inserted those two. So yeah, it would have been better to do the other edge, because that was a lot of moves and 2 rotations. So here you did something a little dubious. You had these 2 edges, which could have just finished off these top 4 edges. They were already paired. I'm guessing you just didn't see those. But you went for these 2. So you just did R prime, U prime, R prime. So that solution was fine, but you really just should have inserted the 2 free edges and been done with that with those top 4. But I'm guessing you didn't see those. So here you really should have probably gone for either these 2 or these 2, because they were both 1 move away from being solved, or even these 2, because it's 3 moves to 1 move away. But instead you went for these 2, or for these 2, which it was definitely not an ideal edge choice. So you went U wide prime, Y2, Y2, U, Y prime, U, Y prime, Y, R prime, U wide prime, U2, U, R, U prime, R prime. So obviously that was a very, very long solution. It would have been better to do the other, one of the other edges, and that did have a lot of rotation. So obviously, I'm guessing you just, yeah, that was a little dubious. So you did a pretty subpar last 4 edges. So let me just show you what I would have done. That'll just be more concise. So I first would have gone for these 2. So I would have gone slice, flip, slice, and then I just would have done these 2. So slice, flip, and then I would have done a wide D prime, because, or no, I just would have done U. So then here, I would do, I just take these out, and then put them in, and then slice, flip, slice. So that's just what I would have done for the last 4 edges. You did a pretty wonky solution, so I'm not gonna go through all of that, but that's just what I would have done.